Recording in progress.
Good morning, America. Good afternoon, Eretz Yisrael. We're continuing the Shiur in Chayei Moharan in the section that's entitled Gedulas Noirois Hasagosoi, Rabbeinu Zal, the awesome achievements of Rabbeinu Zal. And we're up to paragraph 259 in some editions, and also paragraph 19 in those that have this as a separate section. We dedicate the learning today Lilo Nishma Soisha and Tefradal Bas Rabbi Aryeh, and for a complete refuah shalema for all those that need it. Rabbeinu Zal said to one of his students that the thought occurred to him to take his wife and travel to some far distant remote place and be there hidden. No one should know who he is at all, and periodically he should come back to the marketplace and look at the world and laugh at the whole world. Rav Nasan Zal adds that Rabbeinu Zal once said to me personally that there'll come a time that people are going to be yearning in a very big way, and they're going to feel sorry that they had such an extraordinary chiddush amongst them, and they left him and they didn't fulfill everything he told them. Rabbeinu Zal said this referring to himself. The next paragraph, 260, Reish Samach, is a well-known item in Breslov, where Rabbeinu Zal used the term Hungarian wine, Ungarische Wein. And Rabbeinu Zal said a parable, a mashal, that there was once a very, very successful businessman that was traveling, and he had some of this Hungarian wine with him. It seems that during Rabbeinu Zal's time, Hungarian wine was known as the choicest, the best of the best. One time, the assistant that was with him and the wagon driver said to this businessman, "We're traveling with you the whole time with this very special wine, and we're going through so much struggle." In those days, traveling with horse and wagon, you could imagine, wasn't easy. "Allow us to taste a little bit of the wine." He said, "You're right. We know the Torah tells us there's a law, lo yisachsoim shur b'dishoy, that when you're using an ox to thresh your field, you're not allowed to put a muzzle on the ox. While the ox is working, let him eat. Lahavdil, if a person has a human being, a servant, a waiter, it's not the right thing not to allow that person to participate a little in what you're serving." So he gave them a little bit of a taste of this expensive, special Hungarian wine. A while later, this assistant to the businessman was in a bar where people were drinking wine in a small city, and they drank wine and they were praising the wine in a big way. And they said, "This is Hungarian wine." So this assistant said, "Let me taste it." He tasted it and he said, "I know that this is definitely not Hungarian wine." So they got angry at him and they pushed him, that he's busting their bubble. Here they're priding themselves that they're like these rich people who have this Hungarian wine. He said to them, "What are you talking about? I know that this is not Hungarian wine because I was once working for this very wealthy businessman, and he had Hungarian wine and I tasted it, so I know exactly what Hungarian wine is." And they ignored him. Rabbeinu Zal said, in the future, when Mashiach is going to come, and Hashem is going to give the people that are deserving Yayin HaMishumar, which means wine that's been set aside, that's been hidden away for the good people. Rabbeinu Zal said, other people will be able to be fooled. They'll give them Volachischen, Stravitzker, they'll give them other types of wine, and they'll tell them that this is very, very special wine. But my students, no one's going to be able to fool them, because we have tasted the good Hungarian wine. And this is an expression that's known in Breslov, that those people who study Rabbeinu Zal Sfarim, those people who learn Likutei Moharan, Likutei Halachos, the other Sfarim of Rabbeinu Zal, we refer to it as Hungarian wine, meaning, and my Rebbe, Reb Michal Dorfman Zechron Levracha, used to say that every Hasidic sefer is a star, a shining star. The Likutei Moharan is a sun in comparison. The difference between a person, we know again, in reality, a star could be very large, but from where we see it, a star is a tiny little light. The sun is much, much larger in comparison in terms of how we see it, expressing the difference that the things Rabbeinu Zal said about himself and the degree that Rabbeinu Zal killed himself to get to where he got to. It's not that a person can say, oh, this is a Hasidic sefer and this is also a Hasidic sefer. What's the big deal? Why make such a big deal about it? If a person takes a look at the introduction to Likutei Moharan, Rab Nasan Zal was very knowledgeable in all the Hasidic Sforim. He visited all of the Hasidic tzaddikim during that time, and he had tremendous deep love and respect for all of them. But Rab Nasan Zal makes it perfectly clear that this is something different, this is a different league. The level of advice that Rabbeinu Zal gives in every one of his Torahs, the practical advice and certain topics that are found in the Likutei Moharan that are not discussed in any other sefer at all. Incredible, incredible revelations. We know, for example, that those chapters in Likutei Moharan that begin with the word da, you should know, Rabbeinu Zal said the information in that chapter is coming from the Olam Ha'atzilus. It's coming from the highest place. And this is a very, very important yesod in Yiddishkeit. For a person to know that all tzaddikim are not the same, and all sfarim are not the same. We've spoken about this in the past. I don't want to go into the full length of explaining it, but the Zohar HaKadosh shows the contrast between Noach, who is called Ish Tzadik, Tomim Hoya B'Doyroisav, Eshu Elikim Es Halech Noach. Wow. A person looks at that and says, wow, he was really somebody great. He was great enough that when Hashem decided to destroy the entire world, he was an exception. Him and his family and those people that were close to him were an exception. Imagine how special he had to be. And yet the Zohar HaKadosh says that when he came out of the Teva, Hashem referred to him as Raya Shatya, you foolish shepherd. Because Noach was made a comment when he came out of the Teva. Hashem said, where were you before? You should have been mispalel for the people. You could have saved all of this. You could have prevented all of this. You didn't. It's going to be called Noah's flood, Mei Noach. And the Zohar HaKadosh says Avram Avinu was something completely different. When Avram Avinu heard that the cities of Sodom and Amorah were going to be wiped out, Avram Avinu gets up and starts a whole major negotiation with Hashem, trying to prevent it. In the end, he went as far as he thought he could possibly go, because the Torah teaches us that in a negotiation, you have to know when to stop. Tofasta maruba loy tofasta. Sometimes you try for too much, you get nothing. So Avram Avinu's perception of Hashem's kindness was that it's awesome, but it goes up to a certain point. Moshe Rabbeinu took it to a whole other level, the Zohar HaKadosh says, where Moshe Rabbeinu went, but he knew that Hashem's kindness is infinite, no boundaries at all. And he was successful time and time again in getting Hashem to forgive the Jews again and again. Egel HaZahav, Meraglim, everything. That's one example. And then the Zohar HaKadosh gives another example with Yeshaya Hanavi, one of the 24 books of the Torah, Yeshaya Hanavi. We're going to be reading next week. We're going to be reading Chazoin Yeshayahu ben Amoitz Asher Chazal Yerushalayim. Shabbos Chazoin is the opening prophecy of Yeshaya Hanavi versus Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Zohar HaKadosh shows that worlds and worlds apart, vast differences. So for a person to say, of course this is a good sefer, there are other good Sfarim. That's not a religious statement. There are other good Sfarim, no question about it. But not to assume that they're the same, and not to assume that they're going to have the same ability to be able to elevate a person, to improve a person, to give a person what they need to be able to get through all the challenges that we have, in our generation. interesting question in the chat. But I've seen that it's specifically in Breslov that people often fall for teachings and teachers that make grave mistakes in understanding the Breslov tradition. So I don't really understand that the Breslovers would be immune to something false. The answer is no one is immune. No one is immune. And a person picking up a Breslov sefer and learning it on their own, sometimes there's a big potential for error. And this is why we find Pirkei Avos. My Rebbe Rav Rosenfeld used to say that Pirkei Avos is the selected choice statements of each one of the rabbis of the Gemara. In Pirkei Avos, there's a Mishnah where the Mishnah says that there are 48 ways that a person acquires Torah. That Mishnah is very, very serious in making it perfectly clear that this isn't just some other book. This isn't biology, this isn't chemistry, where anyone can sit down, you open the book and you read it. What's the big deal? Torah is something completely different. Torah is divine wisdom. And there are all kinds of prerequisites that a person needs. And the Mishnah there mentions the prerequisites, one of them being Shimush Chachamim, one of the important ones being Shimush Chachamim, meaning that in addition to reading the book, a person has to find a person, an individual that they can learn from, that they can watch. Because sometimes a person reads the book, they can get the wrong impression. They can get all, depending on the person's own understanding. And this aspect of Shimush Chachamim is one of the most important prerequisites to a person being successful in studying Torah properly. The Gemara makes a statement, Godol Shimusha Shel Torah Yoiser Melimuda, that Shimush of Torah is greater than the study of Torah. That a person spending time, quality time with a true Talmid Chacham and watching and listening and learning, watching that, 10 minutes of that could be stronger, could have a greater effect on a person than 10 hours of learning, of book reading. This is a very important prerequisite. And here, because we are in an Olam HaSheker, because we're living in an Olam HaSheker, and in order that there has to be Bechira, everyone has to have Bechira, free choice, that's why the world is set up in such a way that there's non-Jews and Jews. What's the percentage? 1,000,000 to 1. There's 15 billion people in the world. How large is the Jewish nation in comparison? Then let's take the Jewish nation, those people that are not religious versus those that are religious. The religious are a minor fraction. And then within the religious, the Gemara says in Sukkah, Higdil Lasoi Simela, that the Yetzer Hara leaves the ordinary people and he focuses especially on the Talmidei Chachamim to try to get them to stumble, to try to get them to make mistakes. So that it's a delicate search. It's a search for a person to search for a tzaddik amiti, a true tzaddik, a Talmid Chacham amiti. Rabbeinu Zal and Rab Nasan Zal use these words very often. What do you mean there's a Talmid Chacham that's not amiti? There's a Talmid Chacham shkari? The answer is obviously yes. Obviously yes. And a person has to know that this search for the emes is something that's very delicate, not simple. A person has to learn a lot to know how to search. Number one, to know how to search. And this, with all the learning, a person has to beg Hashem all the time to be zeicha ahalech ba'amitecha. Hashem, let me be zeicha to walk with your emes, not with my, what is amitecha? Why doesn't it just say ahalech be'emes? Hashem, allow me to go with the truth. And Rav Nasan Zal explains, because emes, there's 50 different emeses. This person says this is the emes, and that person says that's the emes. And I say that I think I know the emes, and I could be wrong too. And therefore, a person has to always be pleading with Hashem, Ahalech ba'amitecha. Hashem, lead me with your emes, with your truth. You're the one who knows the real truth. You're the one who can guide me and protect me from all the potential pitfalls. Any questions? The next paragraph, Reish Samach Aleph 261. on the night before the bris of Rabbeinu Zal's son, Reb Shlomo Ephraim, who Rabbeinu Zal had such incredible hopes for. Rav Nasan Zal writes that Rabbeinu Zal sat with us for a long time, and he spoke a lot about his own qualities, his greatness. And Rav Nasan Zal says we heard many important things then. And Rabbeinu Zal said that it's difficult for a person to really understand and accept what I'm saying. And Rabbeinu Zal said you can't really talk about this to everybody, because other people also use the same type of words when they talk about themselves, or when they talk about their rabbi. They say the same things. And whatever one person can say, another person can say the same thing about their rabbi, or another person can say the same thing about themselves. But Rabbeinu Zal added, it's only kol chad kifuman de meshar belibe, like the Zohar Kodesh says, it's each and every single individual person, based on their own personal perception. That person has to be able to try to search for and find the truth, and be able to know where the emes la'amito is, where is the real truth. And it's interesting, recently, going back 50 years ago, the topic of kivrei tzadikim was a rare commodity. Miron, let's take Miron for example. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Miron 50 years ago or 60, 70 years ago, throughout the year, you had to struggle to find a minyan there sometimes on Shabbos, because it wasn't a popular thing. Reb Moshe Borstein, Zechron Livrocha, who had a custom of going to Miron every Shabbos Mevorchim, and there were times that he would go every second week. 1 week home, 1 week in Miron for Shabbos. And there were times that there was difficulty with the minyan, he said. And in more recent years, the world has changed dramatically, where you'll never find a Shabbos, you'll never find a weekday in Miron that there isn't a minyan almost around the clock. Minyanim for Shachris, Mincha, Maariv, and Lag BaOmer has grown. The numbers pre-corona, the numbers were over 500,000 people that were going to Miron for Lag BaOmer during that period, those 2-3 days. And the other kivrei tzadikim also similarly. There was nowhere near the popularity, the kever of Shmuel Hanavi, Shimon HaTzadik, the others. It was known, you want to find a Breslover, go to the kivrei tzadikim. Those are the ones who you'll find there. And in recent years, it changed a lot, these places. Then a new thing started happening 30, 40 years ago, that in the yeshiva world, in the Litvish world, where this was, again, if a person would ask his rabbi whether he should go to Miron for Lag BaOmer, the answer was definitely not. Sit and learn. Why shouldn't you be sitting and learning? Or in general, the topic of kivrei tzadikim was played down in a big way. Suddenly it started appearing a trip to the kever of the Chafetz Chaim, a trip to the kever of the Vilna Goyim, and a whole group of Rabbonim who are going to go be mispalel on your behalf in these places. It's changed dramatically. And in more recent years, there's Reb Shayela. Everybody knows Reb Shayela and other tzaddikim, and people are quoting all kinds of incredible guarantees that this tzaddik gave, and this tzaddik gave, if you come to my kever, you'll have this, you'll have that, all kinds of things. Rab Nasan Zal writes in Likutei Halachos in the Hilchos Shabbos, he writes that a person needs to know that some of this is the work of the Yetzer Hara, that the Yetzer Hara will go so far as to support and give popularity and publicity to other tzaddikim, to other rabbis, in order to keep people away from the tzaddik who's in the best position to be able to help the person and to help Klal Yisrael. And Rav Nasan Zal says, every tzaddik is a tzaddik. He can help certain people, but not every tzaddik is equipped to be able to help all of Klal Yisrael, the Dorei Mala, the Dorei Mata, the most advanced people who are on the lowest, furthest away from Hashem. Remember, the Gemara says in Soita, Daf Yud Daled, where the Gemara says, why is it that we don't know where Moshe Rabbeinu is buried? So the Gemara says there, because if we'd know where Moshe Rabbeinu is buried, people would go there and they would say to Moshe Rabbeinu, you defended us when you were living, get up now and defend us. And Moshe Rabbeinu would nullify the decree. He would force the coming of Moshiach. Yes time, right, yes right time, no right time, he would nullify it. And then the Gemara goes on to say, take a look, during Moshe Rabbeinu's time, he wasn't the only one. There were great people, Aaron HaKohen, Shivim Zkenim, Yehoshua, there were other great tzaddikim. None of them were able to accomplish what Moshe Rabbeinu was able to accomplish. The Gemara says this. He was the one time and time again who was able to defend the Yidden and overturn the decree. So there's a point being made very, very clearly that tzaddikim are not the same. And here again, Rabbeinu Zal said, each person, kol chad kifoman meshar belibe, each person according to what that person feels in their heart, will be able to understand where the emes la'amito is, to search where is the real truth. This is true, this is true, this is good, all good, all good. But not all equal, that's for sure not. Any questions? Now we come to something that clarifies this even a little bit more. Paragraph Reish Samach Beis 262. Rabbeinu Zal repeatedly reviewed what people were saying about him at the time, that there's no middle ground. There's no middle ground when it comes to Rabbeinu Zal. Either what the misnagdim, what his opponents are saying is true, that he's mamish, a destructive force, and stay far away from this person. As Devarim says in Tehillim, Hadoivrim al tzadik osok begaiva vavuz. Devarim, people, I've heard this throughout the years. There were people who said to me, how could Breslov be correct if this great Rav said it's not? Or that great Rav said it's not? Or why aren't these Rabbanim going to Rabbi Nachman? If Rabbi Nachman is such a big tzaddik, why aren't these Rabbanim going? And very often I'll respond, this Rav you're talking about, is he like the Shvatim? Is he like Ruvain ben Yaakov, Shimon ben... Is he, I don't know, but I don't think so, you know. Because the Shvatim, the Torah tells us, made a tragic, terrible mistake. That there was one among them who was way, way above them. Even though they had Ruach HaKodesh, they were on very high madrega, above the Tanoim, above the Amoraim, and yet they couldn't see. They couldn't see. It looked to them as if Yosef HaTzadik was a Balgaiva. It looked as if he was saying terrible things and doing all kinds of terrible things, to the point where they made a bezdin, and they came to a decision that this person deserves to be killed. And we're going to do it. We're going to execute him. And they started, and then they decided, no, we don't have to dirty our hands. There's a pit of snakes and scorpions here. Throw him in there. And then they sold him into slavery to Mitzrayim, the worst possible place on earth. The Torah calls it Ervas Oretz. And in Mitzrayim, they got him into the worst house, Potiphar and Potiphar's wife. The Torah tells us about Potiphar's wife and Potiphar, what their intentions were and everything. And still, Yosef HaTzadik came out on top. And every word of the prophecy, they're going to bow to him, they bowed to him, and they pleaded, they begged him for forgiveness. And Paroi said, Paroi saw what the Shvatim didn't see. Paroi said, Hayesh, is there an Ish Elokim like this? Is there Isha Sheruach boy like this person? When he had the dream and the dream was interpreted, and 7 good years, 7 years of famine, the whole world is going to be wiped out. And Yosef HaTzadik said, you need somebody really, really big who can save this situation. Paroi said, I'm looking at him. I don't have to go searching anyway. You're the man. Isha Sheruach boy. Paroi said this. A person would say, I don't understand. Paroi was a bigger tzaddik than the Shvatim? Paroi was able to say. The answer is Paroi didn't have their Yetzer Hara. Paroi didn't have their test. Their test, this was their test, and this is a test throughout all the generations, that there are tzaddikim, there are great people, and these tzaddikim need to be able to know who they are and who they aren't, to be able to realize who's the Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the Arizal, who is the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Zal. The Gemara tells us that during the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was a Rabbi Gamliel who was a descendant of David HaMelech, the Nasi of Klal Yisrael, the chief rabbi. Not like today. Today there's no such thing. Today we say chief rabbi. The chief rabbi is accepted by a certain community. And this Rosh Yeshiva, they say, he's the Gadol Hador. It's the Gadol Hador that's accepted by a particular community. There's no one individual that's accepted unanimously by all. There's no such thing. During Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's time, there was a Nasi. There was one Nasi in Klal Yisrael. There weren't two. And the Nasi had a policy of, he put a guard at the door to the yeshiva, and they were very selective in who they accepted to the yeshiva, who they didn't. And the Gemara says in Brachas that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai worked out a whole scheme, an incredible plan, to get Rabbi Gamliel deposed, to get him removed, impeached, and to get him replaced. And the Gemara says on the day that happened, the doors to the yeshiva were open. They added 700 benches to the yeshiva. All kinds of new people came that were allowed. And that's when they learned Masechta Edyas. People came and reviewed all kinds of new items in Torah that weren't known till then. This was really, and the Gemara says at the end, in the beginning, it doesn't say who this was, because you look at the story as it's unraveling, you think that, wow, this Talmud is going to burn in Gehenna. It says, Maaseh b'Talmud Echad, who orchestrated this whole thing. He orchestrated a world war between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. And all the way at the end of the story, it says, and by the way, guess who this Talmud, the one who did all of this? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There are people that think that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was just a Mekubal. He had his group of Mekubalim. They learned Kabbalah all day, all cute. But he wasn't a Rosh Yeshiva. He wasn't with the people. Here the Gemara shows that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was with the greatest of the greatest. He was the revealing the secrets of the Zohar Kodesh Tikkunei Zohar, and at the same time he was looking out to be Makarev, everyone who could possibly become a Kurev, to open the doors wide so that those who need to be allowed to come in should be able to come in. Any questions? So continuing in this paragraph, so Rabbeinu Zal reviewed many times that during his time there were people who said either what the Misnagdim is saying is true, that he's the worst of the worst, and maybe like Yosef HaTzadik, we gotta get rid of this guy. Or if what they're saying is not true, then it's the opposite. He must be the Tzadik Emes, and he's a Chiddush, the most incredible Chiddush, that there was never anyone like this till now in the history of the Jewish people. Because Rav Nasan Zal writes, that's what people were saying at the time. The people that were in Shiur were saying that Rabbeinu Zal, Rabbi Nachman, is something very unique. Either the worst of the worst or the best of the best. No in between. And Rabbeinu Zal reviewed this. Rav Nasan Zal writes, he said this, told us over many times. And he hinted to us that this is the truth. This is the truth, that there's no gray here. There's no parav. And Rav Nasan Zal writes, V'haboichar yivchar lo ho'emes. And each person will choose what they consider to be the truth. Because the truth is one, as Rabbeinu Zal writes in Torah Nun Aleph and Likutei Moharan. And Rav Nasan Zal adds that from this discussion, a person could realize a little bit about Rabbeinu Zal's greatness from the tremendous opposition, how the Yetzer Hara went so far to oppose him in so many different ways, all the attacks that Rabbeinu Zal had during his life with his own health and with losing all the different manias and obstacles that he had, and be able to come to an idea as to the incredible greatness of Rabbeinu Zal. Because there's no in-between here, there's no middle. And Rav Nasan Zal adds, V'chovein heitev ho'emes lamitoi. Understand very, very well the real truth about this. Interesting to note, there's a Gemara, the Gemara at the end of Sotah, where the Gemara gives hints as to how things are going to be before the coming of Mashiach. And one of the statements that the Gemara makes there is that the Gemara says that the world is going to be either kuloi zakai or kuloi chayav. Either everybody's going to be religious, everybody's going to be, or chas v'shalom, the opposite. Everybody's going to be guilty, everybody's going to be rishoyim. And all the Mefarshim struggle with this, trying to understand this, that either one of these possibilities seems impossible before Mashiach comes. that every kuloi zakai, how could that such a thing possibly be? And kuloi chayev we know can't be, because the Gemara says if ever the Torah is not being studied, Hashem shuts down the world. He pulls the plug. So what does the Gemara mean? So one of the famous interpretations is that olam here means each individual person, that there won't be any gray anymore. People will not be able to stay in the middle. It'll be either kuloi zakai or kuloi chayev. People are going to be drawn to becoming more religious or really religious, or chas v'shalom, the opposite. And we see during our time things that we never saw before. Sedoim and Amora were like Little League compared to some of the things we see that the secular world is promoting today. The bilbil that's going on in the secular world and even in the religious world. Things seeping in, Rahman al-Islam. The kind of confusion, the terrible confusion going on. We should be zeicha to search for the emes, and to be zeicha to come close to the, and this term emes la'amitoi, this isn't a Breslov term. The Gemara uses this wording, and a person would say, I don't understand, what does that mean? There's an emes l'shikroi? And the answer is yes. The Gemara speaks about kol dayan hadon din emes la'amitoi, that a court, when a court processes a case and they come to a conclusion, it could be emes, but it's not the emes la'amitoi. There's a much higher emes, which is a whole completely different thing. Just like when Rab Nasan Zal went to Rabbeinu Zal for advice, his father-in-law, who was one of the major Gedolei Ador at that time, took him as his son-in-law and was grooming him to take over his position. And he was offering him a position where he would never have to think about parnasa. He'd be able to devote all of his time to learning and paskening, being a dayan to pasken shailas. And Rab Nasan Zal went to Rabbeinu Zal himself and asked him, is this a good direction for me to go in my life? And Rabbeinu Zal said, Nish kosher. Nish kosher in Yiddish means good. And Rab Nasan Zal heard good, and he felt something is not real. Something I think he's not being really honest with me. And at a different occasion, he asked the question again, and Rabbeinu Zal gave the same answer. Nish kosher. And Rab Nasan Zal knew, he knew the truth enough, he was honest enough with himself, and honest enough about everything in Yiddishkeit that you couldn't fool him. Even a tzaddik couldn't fool him. And then the third time he went over to Rabbeinu Zal and he said, Rebbe, I want to know the emes or emes. Tell me the real truth. Is this what I should be doing? Rabbeinu Zal said to him, you want to know the real truth? The real truth? Something totally, das Reisen Kvorim. In English, you have to burn rubber. You have a different mission in life completely. If Rab Nasan Zal would have taken that position, we wouldn't be learning Chayei Moharan now, and we wouldn't have a Likutei Moharan, we wouldn't have anything. With all due respect to Rabbeinu Zal himself said, were it not for him, there wouldn't be a page of my writings. Proof is, we don't have any Sfarim that were written by any of the other Talmidim. Only Rab Nasan Zal was the one who killed himself to make sure to document everything he could possibly document, the Likutei Moharan, the Chayei Moharan, the Sichos Saran, the Sipurei Maisias, the Sefer Amidos, everything to try to see to it that nothing should be lost. And still there were things that were lost. But he did everything possible in the world to salvage it. And on top of that, he was zeicha that Rabbeinu Zal gave him a Birur Hamedameh, and Rabbeinu Zal told him that he's qualified to be Mechadesh in Torah, to give us a Likutei Halachos, to give us the Sfarim that Rab Nasan Zal himself gave us, which are unbelievable. And here we see that even when a person is coming to a Rav, I remember hearing this from Rav Rosenfeld, a person goes to a Rav and asks a Shaila, is this kosher? And the Rav says yes. And then one of the Rav's children sees him eating that, doing that. He says, why are you eating it? What do you mean? I asked the Shaila, I asked your father, I asked the Rav, and he said it's okay. I know in our house we don't use that, or we don't use that at all. I don't understand. He told me it's okay. What's going on here? There's two Torahs? And the answer is yes, there's two Torahs. Depending on how you ask a question, that's how you'll get the answer sometimes. You want to ask, am I allowed to do that? Yeah. Would you do it? Something completely different. The answer is definitely. Why not? If you're allowed, why not? Because within mutter, there's levels and levels and levels. And according sometimes, if a person is looking to get a passing grade, then they'll get a passing grade. The tzaddik, the Talmid Chacham will give them what they need to pass. If a person is looking to do the right thing, if a person wants to know what's really right, the person wants to know, would you do this? Would you eat that kind of thing? Then they'll get sometimes a completely different answer. It's brought, the Zohar Kodesh says that in the Aseres HaDibros, one of the 10 commandments is Loi Signoiv, thou shalt not steal. And there it's brought that it refers to Genevis Das also, that in terms of somebody fooling somebody or tricking somebody, that's also a form of Geneva. And the Zohar Kodesh says that there's a psik in between the Loi and Signoiv. Don't, period, steal. And the Zohar Kodesh says that there are times when it comes to a tzaddik or a Talmid Chacham that a person is allowed to steal. For example, if a Talmid Chacham asks, he's about to give over a Dvar Torah and he says, did I ever tell you this Dvar Torah about this? If the person heard it already, they're allowed to say no. They're allowed to say, no, I never heard it. Why? Because they want to hear it again. Why do they want to hear it again? For two reasons. Number one, when you hear something a second time, it has an important effect. And number two, the Torah promises, Ein Beis Medrash B'lo Chiddush, that when a true Talmid Chacham says a Dvar Torah, if you heard it before, it's very likely that you're going to hear something new that you didn't hear before. You're going to get something new. So here again, depending on how serious a person is in that search for the emes, there's levels and levels and levels of how serious a person is, that I'm not looking to pass. I'm not looking to get the, I want the maximum. When it comes to Yiddishkeit, I want maximum. I want the best. We know that in the Olam HaGashmi, in materialism, there are many people today who, if they hear there's this and it costs 5,000, but if you want the better one, it's 12,000. Give me the better one, right? There's no hesitation. We know when it comes, the Baal Shem Tov once said that we say in Aleinu, Bashamayim imal, v'alo oretz mitochas ein oid. Bashamayim, when it comes to ruchnius, when it comes to heavenliness, mimal, always look above you. If there's better, if there's more, always want the better. I want the better one. I don't want the bidya, I want the best. Val ha'oretz, when it comes to earthliness, when it comes to gashmius, mitochas. If you see that there's someone that has less than you, then I'm okay. I don't have to feel bad that there's somebody that has more than me. There are people that have less than me. So Baruch Hashem, I have to be super content and satisfied with what I have, that kind of thing. Any questions? Rav Nasan Zal writes that the first Rosh Hashanah that he came to Rabbeinu Zal, Rav Nasan Zal met Rabbeinu Zal in the month of Elul. Rabbeinu Zal had moved to the city of Breslov from a different location completely, and Rav Nasan Zal was living in Nemirov, which was about 18 kilometers from Breslov, and they heard that a new Rebbe came to town, and people were saying unusual things about him. And Rav Nasan Zal was always searching. He, with all that he had received from all the tzaddikim he met, he felt something's missing. I'm not there yet. I'm not where I need to be. And when he heard a new Rebbe came to town, him and his friends went to Breslov to see Rabbeinu Zal, and the whole story is documented about that first meeting. And already he heard that by Rabbeinu Zal, Rosh Hashanah is the main thing. At that time already, Rabbeinu Zal made it clear to his Talmidim that Rosh Hashanah, Gorma and Zach is Rosh Hashanah. The most important thing is to be with the tzaddik for Rosh Hashanah. Rav Nasan Zal went home, got his clothes, got his stuff, and came back for Rosh Hashanah. That first Rosh Hashanah, Tov Kuf Samar Gimel, 5,563. And Rav Nasan Zal says, I was there for Rosh Hashanah, and the entire Aseres Yemei Tshuva through Yom Kippur, till after Yom Kippur. After Yom Kippur, I went home, and Reb Yudel and Reb Shmuel Isaac, they remained for Sukkot. And I heard some very precious things from Reb Yudel afterwards that he had heard after I had left, Rav Nasan Zal says. But unfortunately, I don't remember them well. Picture Rav Nasan Zal saying these words, I don't remember. Sometimes when we forget something, we feel terrible, this, that. We need to know that even by Rab Nasan Zal, who's a completely different, it was possible to certain things could be forgotten. And he says, once on Hoshana Rabbah, Rabbeinu Zal said to the people that were there at the time, what can I do that these two murderers are standing near me? And they're telling me that I am a manhig, that I am a leader of Klal Yisrael. And he pointed to Reb Yudel and Reb Shmuel Isaac when he said two murderers, Roitzchim, he called them. And Rab Nasan Zal says, because they were so attached to him, because they were so on top of him in a sense. And Rab Nasan Zal says, who can understand why Rabbeinu Zal used that kind of term that he called them Roitzchim? Because these people were very, very precious in his eyes. They were among his greatest Mekuravim, these two giants. Reb Yudel, before he came to Rabbeinu Zal, was a Mekubal. He had his own students. He was a giant. And Reb Shmuel Isaac also, the things that are written about him, about his tefillah, his dveikus and tefillah. Rab Nasan Zal writes that we don't understand how Rabbeinu Zal used this term. On Shmini Atzeres, Rabbeinu Zal spoke to them about the tremendous importance of dancing and clapping hands, because Simchas Torah was coming, which is one of the greatest celebrations of the whole year. And Rabbeinu Zal spoke about somersaults, about people who know how to make somersaults, wheel cards they call it also. And Rabbeinu Zal said the Torah speaks about this. The Torah says that when it came to Matan Torah, Moshe Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Hashem, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, and Hashem came down. A reverse, Hashem going down and Moshe Rabbeinu going up, as is found in Sichoi Saran in Rabbi Nachman's Wisdom, paragraph 86. And Rabbeinu spoke about all the comedy acts that people do at a simcha, on Simchas Torah, things that people do to make freilich. And Rabbeinu Zal revealed Devarim, incredible things. Afterwards, the people from the city started coming, and they came with song and joy, which was the minig in those places in Eastern Europe on Shmini Atzeres. Don't forget, in Chutz La'aretz, we're talking about where there's Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, 2 days. And then Rabbeinu Zal turned to Rabbi Yudel and Rabbi Shmuel Isaac, and he said, go, because now I have to be with them. I have to be with these people. And this is not shaykh to you. This has nothing to do with you. And they left. We see again, Rabbeinu Zal speaks about this a lot, that by the tzaddikim there are different categories. There's the dorei mala, the dorei mata. And the tzaddik knows how to deal with each one on his level. When we just had recently, a week ago, we read Parshas Pinchas, that when Moshe Rabbeinu was preparing to leave the world, and he asked Hashem to give the Yidden a replacement, he said, Ish asher ruach boy, the qualification to be the manig of Klal Yisrael, Ish asher ruach boy, one who knows how to address every single different Yid. He knows what this person needs and what that person needs, and sometimes it's two different things. Sometimes they have to be kept apart, separate places, to be able to address their needs and their needs. It's brought that there was a minute during Rabbeinu Zal's time that they would walk him to shul for Simchas Torah, the people under a chuppah. They would walk him under a chuppah to shul. That's how he would go into the shul for Simchas, the night of Simchas Torah. And Rabbi Nasan Zal writes that there was tremendous celebration then. Rabbeinu Zal danced a lot from the beginning of the night until a few hours into the night of Simchas Torah. and it's known the incredible sweetness and holiness of Rabbeinu Zal's dancing, that his dancing was something extraordinary, because a person who hadn't seen that, Rabbi Nasan said, you never saw anything like this in your life, Rabbeinu Zal's dancing. Interesting to note, the people see this, Breslov and Mishigoyim. Well, could have been learning Torah. The Arizal, there are people who would be less hesitant to use that kind of word about the Arizal. It's brought that the Arizal, on the night of Simchas Torah, when they finished dancing in the shul that he was in, he would go to the next shul. he would go from shul to shul, dancing on the night of Simchas Torah, until the last shul closed their lights or finished their dancing on the night of Simchas Torah. We're talking about the greatest of tzaddikim, who appreciated every second was so precious in their lives, and they understood the incredible chashivus of dancing with the Sefer Torah, the celebration, related to the Torah Kedusha. Rav Nasan Zal adds that we already discussed this earlier, that year Rabbeinu Zal had danced a lot on Shmini Atzeres, on Shabbos Chanukah, at Shalashudas, after he said Torah Ches and Likutei Moharan, Ra'isim and Oira Zohov, and on Purim, and then Rosh Chodesh Nisan was when his daughter Sarah got married, and Rabbeinu Zal danced a lot with the Kala at Shalashudas of the Shabbos Chasana, and then afterwards, after he said the Torah Memtes, V'hu kechosan yotzei michupasoi, where Rabbeinu Zal began that Torah with the words V'hu kechosan yotzei michupasoi, but when he gave over the Torah in writing, it began with the words La Shemesh Sam Oil Bahem. And after Rabbeinu Zal said the Torah, he danced a lot with his daughter. And Rav Nasan Zal writes, Ashrei Ayin Roas Azois, Ashrei to the person who saw this, the concept of a mitzvah tanz. and Rav Nasan Zal says, I heard from Rabbeinu Zal himself that he said that year I danced a lot because there were terrible gzeiros that were being planned against Klal Yisrael. And by dancing and clapping, that's how we're able to be mamtik the dinim and eliminate gzeiros. And it's known that Rabbeinu Zal said he was successful in pushing off those gzeiros, the Cantonese, for 20 some odd years. And Rav Nasan Zal writes that it was later, after Rabbeinu Zal was nifta, during Rav Nasan Zal's time, approximately 20 some odd years, that those decrees went into effect. Question?
I always hear about this with the Gezerah. So really what was gained? That the Rebbe just pushed off the Gezerah, but the Gezerah still came to play later.
The Gemara says, Bas Dina, Botel Dina, that when a Gezerah is postponed, it becomes nullified. Meaning, number one, it could have been, it didn't have to come back. Could be if the people had done what they should have should have done, it would have been the end completely. But the fact that Rabbeinu Zal pushed it, a tzaddik, one of the functions of a tzaddik is to protect his generation. The Gemara says a tzaddik who in his vicinity, that somebody gets hurt, it implies that the tzaddik isn't really as high as he should be, because if he were really such a great tzaddik, in the area that he's in, there should be a shmira for 100 miles around him that nobody could be hurt. And again, a shmira in time, that he was able, that during his lifetime, and again for 20 some odd years, he was able to push it off. Had Moshiach could have come during that time, there could have been all kinds of Yeshuas. The next paragraph, Reish Samachei, Rabbeinu Zal was once talking about the fact that he recently started learning Chosh Mishpat again, the fourth section of Shulchan Aruch, which in some ways is the most difficult, that deals with money matters, litigation, and he started learning the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Beis Yosef, together with the Shach and the Sma, the two major commentaries over there. And Rabbeinu Zal said that in a short period of time, he got up to Simon's chapter 91, which means he learned about 200 pages of Chosh Mishpat in a short period of time. And Rabbeinu Zal said he remembers every single paragraph, every single sif, for exactly where it begins. And there was a Rav there at the time, a Rav, and they started talking about different questions that come up in Chosh Mishpat, and the Rav couldn't answer. Rabbeinu Zal was asking him questions in Chosh Mishpat, and the Rav couldn't answer. And then Rav Nasan writes there was a doctor there, and Rabbeinu Zal spoke to him. Also didn't know, couldn't respond at all. And Rabbeinu Zal said that in Nigla, in the revealed part of the Torah, in Gemara and Halacha, it's much easier to be mechadesh, to see new things in the Halacha, than it is in Nistar. in Kabbalah, in secrets of Torah. But Rav Nasan Zal writes, unfortunately, I don't remember, again, he has these words, Ve'eni zoicher kol zeitiv, I don't remember the discussion well. And Rav Nasan Zal writes, there were many times that we saw Rabbeinu Zal speaking to people about halachas in Shulchan Aruch, in the big Shulchan Aruch. In those days, there wasn't a Mishnah Brura, there wasn't a Kitzah Shulchan Aruch, there weren't these things. And Rabbeinu Zal was a baki in all of these laws. He knew these laws thoroughly and clearly, incredibly, to the point where somebody who had just been learning that topic, when they spoke to Rabbeinu Zal, they didn't have the same level of clarity. When they got into a discussion, they weren't as clear in the halachas as Rabbeinu Zal was in those halachas. Rav Nasan Zal says, I also heard it told over in Rabbeinu Zal's name that he said that if he would have wanted to say drashos in Gemara Rashi Tosfos, then all the rabbis would be under his feet, meaning they would all be learning from him, they would all be his students. But Rabbeinu Zal said, I don't have cheshik for that, I don't have a desire for that. And then Rabbeinu Zal added that in Nigla it's much easier to be mechadesh, and Rav Nasan Zal is a person who studies Rabbeinu Zal's words carefully, could come to a realization of what kind of levels of chachma Rabbeinu Zal had achieved. The next paragraph, Reish Samach Vav, Rabbeinu Zal said that all of the good things that Moshiach is going to do for Klal Yisrael, I'm able to do those things also. The difference is that Moshiach is going to issue a decree, and it's going to be fulfilled. But I, and Rabbeinu Zal didn't finish the sentence. Rav Nasan Zal says this is one version of what he said, and another version is that he said, but I cannot complete this. I cannot finish this job. And Rav Nasan Zal said there's a third version, which is that by me, there's still Bechira. Rabbeinu Zal said, I'm going to be giving the same advice and the same solutions as Mashiach is going to give. It's just that when Mashiach is going to give it, there's not going to be any free choice anymore just about. Everyone is going to comply, everyone's going to do it. And now there still is Bechira. I remember once hearing when I first came to Breslov in one of the Shiur in Eretz Yisrael, that I believe Rabbi Chaim Zachron Avrocha said this in the name of one of the tzaddikim, that he said that when Moshiach is going to finish his Shiur, when he's going to be giving a Dvar Torah to Klal Yisrael, at the end he's going to say, Kimavur b'Likutei Moharan, as is explained in Likutei Moharan. We know that there are many tzaddikim, great tzaddikim, throughout the generations that quoted Likutei Moharan and that revered it in a very revered Rabbeinu Zal and his teachings in a very big way. Rav Nasan Zal says, I heard it told over, I heard it said over in the name of Rabbeinu Zal, that he said that he was zeicha to achieve Yechida on its highest level. Yechida shabi Yechida. And Rav Nasan Zal explains, because the Arizal explains that there are 5 levels to the ruchnius of a person, to the spirituality of the person. There's the nefesh, which is the lowest level. Then there's ruach. Then there's neshama. Then there's chaya. And then there's yechida. Yechida is the highest level. And it's known that the nefesh of neshama, the lowest level within neshama, is much, much higher than the yechida of ruach. And Rabbeinu Zal said that he was masig yechida on its highest level, So Rabbeinu Zal said, so this would imply that I know a little bit, I know mat, and I'm in a very high place, but still I want more. I want more because who knows? Maybe there must be more and more because Hashem is infinite. Infinite means that there's no end. That even though the Arizal describes these 5 levels, it doesn't mean that it's the end. There's still higher and higher, madregas that are higher and higher. Interesting that the word ma'at is used here. There's a pasuk in Tehillim where the pasuk says, "Vatechasrehu ma'at me'elokim," referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara says, what does that mean? Elokim is Hashem. The Gemara says that Hashem is the 50th level of Bina. Moshe Rabbeinu achieved 49 out of 50. 49 out of 50 levels of Bina. That's this ma'at. The term ma'at being used about Moshe Rabbeinu. The Arizal says, let me qualify this. Each name of Hashem has a certain different number of formats that it can be written. Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which has 4 letters, but because 2 of the letters are the same, because the letter Hey is repeated, it has 12 combinations. There are 12 Yud-based Sirufei Avaya, whereas Hashem's name, Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, where it's 4 unique letters, A, B, C, D, has 24 combinations. When you have 5 letters, Hashem's name Elokim, which has 5 letters, you can have 120 different sirufim. The Arizal says, "Vatechasreyu ma'at me'elokim." Ma'at is 119. Moshe Rabbeinu was masig 119 out of 120. Out of 120 units of Elokim, Moshe Rabbeinu was masig 119. That level. Rabbeinu Zal said, I'm going to sing the song of the future, the song that Klal Yisrael is going to hear in Olam Haba, the song of all the tzaddikim and chasidim. And we know that Rabbeinu Zal refers to this topic of the Shiur Shelosed Lovoi in a few places in the Likutei Moharan, Torah Samach Daled, in the last Torah that Rabbeinu Zal said on Rosh Hashanah, Torah Ches, in the second half of the Likutei Moharan Tanina. Reb Nosson Zal adds one more closing statement in this paragraph, that once Rabbeinu Zal lifted up his hands up to his shoulders, and he motioned from the shoulder downward, and he said, all of the other leaders, all of the other tzaddikim are from here downwards. And then he lifted up his hands above his head and downward, up to the shoulders, and he said, and I find myself on this level. And Rab Nosson Zal writes, V'hadvorim atikim. This is something that's very, very deep. And he says, look in the Kisvei Arizal, and if you have an understanding in Kabbalah a little, you'll be able to understand what Rabbeinu Zal was speaking about here, about the different levels that a person can get to when a person wants to fulfill the will of Hashem, the different levels of shleimus that a person can get to in completing his tselem Elokim. Because the Arizal speaks about different levels of Kedusha, and the Arizal says that a lower level, the highest that it could possibly get to compared to the level above it, is up to the chazeh, up to the chest. Whereas the higher level is that much above it, head and shoulders above, that kind of concept. And again, this Rabbeinu Zal was referring to here. We'll add one more short paragraph. Rabbeinu Zal said, I have the ability to receive huge sums of money, and it shouldn't affect me one iota. It shouldn't make any change in me at all whatsoever. Because it's normal by people, when a person receives money, especially when he receives a large sum of money, his face changes. It affects a change in the person. But by me, even if I would receive a huge sum of money in one shot, it wouldn't affect any iota of change in me at all. And Rab Nosson Zal says, I heard it said over in the name of Rabbeinu Zal, that he said that his ability to receive money is one of the incredible chidushim by Hashem, among the chidushim that exist by Hashem. Because by Hashem there are many different many unique things, and Rabbeinu Zal's ability to receive money is among the great chidushim by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's interesting, we're saying this today at the culmination of a 6-week trip to the United States, which some people would refer to as a fundraising trip. I remember my Rebbe, Reb Michal Dorfman, Zichron Livracha, one time when I was leaving on a trip to America, he said to me, "You're not a meshulach, you're not a collector. You're going on a mission. Do what you're supposed to do, and Hashem will do what needs to be done. Regarding fundraising, that kind of concept. The what's going on in the world today, what's going on in Klal Yisrael today. On one hand, Bali Ayin Hara, we see incredible chidushim. We see a neighborhood like Monsey, which 50 years ago you would drive around Monsey, you'd see a little shul here, a little shul over there. Today you drive, you see gorgeous shuls, binyanim, shuls, yeshivas, mikvahs, one bigger than the other, one larger and more beautiful than the other. Hashem should help that the entire frum world should have prosperity, should have shefa, bracha, and atzlacha, and should be matzliach, and especially all of Rabbeinu Zal's inyanim, that Rabbeinu Zal should have the ashirus, the kedusha that he needs to be able to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, to bring us to the Geula Shleima b'mher b'yameinu, amen v'amen.